Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Drinking out of a fire hose a little bit. You can kind of picture that. No, it's been like the most rewarding part is being back around the high school coaches. I got to see Claude Mathis, Scott Stewart, Hank Carter, dear friends of mine, mentors of mine. You guys saw like a tweet I put out about a week ago about high school coaches are my heroes. Well, that's true. You know, I believe in high school football. I believe in the high school experience.
Well, I think anytime you surround yourself with great people, and it's amazing what those good football players will do for a guy's career. And we did have a great deal of success, which provides opportunity. But the timing wasn't right. Some of that was family related. My kids are older now. I've got a senior son. And at the end of the day, it's Coach Matt Rule, a great staff that I've had a chance and a pleasure to get to know in the last month and a half. And it's the University of Nebraska. That's different.
Wake up, people. It's Friday here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers, and we are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. And DB, I know what you're thinking. I know why you like Garrett McGuire. I mean, whenever he
I don't know if I do yet.
Whenever he hypes you up like he does, I mean, you drink out of fire hoses all the time.
Yes, sir.
So we know that because he made that reference, it pulled at your heartstrings a bit. No, of course, it was the high school side of things when he talked about how high school coaches are kind of his people.
Yeah. It's
drinking out of a fire hose a little bit.
Is that in between Pop-Tarts and honey buns or
hey,
what?
Why don't you ever give me Pop-Tarts and honey buns?
Well, you had your own Pop-Tart yesterday.
Yeah, but I have to bring my own. Why aren't we hanging out with Pop-Tarts and honey buns?
So I have a box. I just don't know how old it is.
Is it on the brand or off the brand?
It's on brand.
Okay.
Can you buy Pop-Tarts plain label?
Yeah, everywhere.
Are they good though? Is what
No.
Say that's okay.
No, that's why I
add Pop-Tarts to the list of things you cannot buy plain label.
No. Any like breakfast items for me too. Cereal, same way. I can't do the off brand.
Who are you, Coach McGuire? Man, did he sound young. So he is
me.
He's the first guy whose vocabulary didn't
fit the persona.
No.
Right.
No, it sounded very
He's
young.
ahead of his time,
which is fine. Like I couldn't care less, because here's the deal with that group at wide receiver. I don't know if you fine folks know this, but it's going to be all about relations.
Oh, right? Is it?
He'll be fine teaching, but you have to, because it's just a position. It's a lot like running backs, except a little worse. Right? We're just prima donnas by nature, and it's just a different vibe to the room. There's plenty of knockdown dragouts, and it was fortunate that we had some tough guys that could handle their own. But like when you have high maintenance running backs and high maintenance wide receivers, you need some guys to keep them in line. You know, so we had kind of that dirty, gritty, mean-spirited offensive line and a super mean-spirited defense. So the checks and balances were always good. And what I hope for Nebraska, I really do, because I think there's something to this, Drew Down. I want good old-fashioned competition within practice, because for like 10 years, I've watched the defense literally just punk Nebraska's offense. I mean, pretty much. I think there were some guys to clap back a little bit, but it's like old heads, you know, like Brandon Riley and some guys like that come to mind that just wouldn't put up with it. You know, Trey Palmer tried to bring it back, but I mean, you aren't far enough removed from like Deontay Williams and Cam Taylor-Britt. I mean, Dismuke, those guys would bark. People would be like, "Ooh, I'm messing with those guys." I'm like, man, come on, right? Like, we need some balance here.
Oh yeah,
we need some balance.
They throw shade at you, you throw it back.
Right? You just can't be acting like that at practice. So I hope that, because I think it's part of it, the whole fearless thing that I like, the competitiveness. Like, you have to be able to give as good as you get in practice. So I hope he brings that to that room, because he's going to have some young guys. And I'm hoping, and he's been quiet this offseason, I'm hoping guys like Marcus Washington, kind of steady the ship because he's a lot of things and a tough guy and not a fake tough guy. So
Right.
I just hope he brings that presence back
Mhm.
that when you're in that wide receiver room, it means something. I don't worry about that at all with the running backs though, because Barthel will have those guys.
Well, and as you mentioned that friendly competition that you're looking for, he at least alluded to that
Yeah.
in his presser because it's nice to have that relationship with Evan Cooper, and we've known about this for a couple of weeks now because they internally have their own workout competitions, which then that carries over to the practice field. And he said, "Don't worry, like." We're gonna take care of Coop's DBs.
Yeah.
Like we're going to make sure that we compete, and there may be a little side bet action going on between me and Coop.
It's weird, right? It's refreshing in this weird sort of way. You don't think much of it. I'm glad you caught it because Coop's one of those guys, and I don't know him that well yet, but he's one of those guys that I know for sure is confident. Like he's a confident guy.
I think most of them are.
And he's got a good group, relatively speaking, in terms of maturation and playmaking ability. So I could see those guys just being off the chain, right? Because most of your dogs that you know of that are returning are on defense, right? With Reimer and Henrich and Ty Robinson and Butler. And that secondary, Malcolm Hartzog, they just, a lot of the fellas, Miles Farmer, those guys are on the back end. So it's like, I don't know, Fleeks, Washington, you guys have to come on down because they can make life miserable for the young Bucks. And I think Nebraska's going to have a couple young wide receivers step up. That's why I'm excited about Fedoni with Bob Wager because Fedoni, if he's healthy, is not going to put up with a lot, right? I kind of like what's brewing from a competitive standpoint.
And to touch on the wide receivers just here one more time, I'm adding Billy Kemp is going to be something that ultimately pays off in the long run, whether it's you get the production on the football field or you get that leader that you're looking for in that room. He's been setting the tone already just in the weight room, putting forth that strong work ethic. And it's starting to become contagious with others in that room. So having a guy like him too is huge. And McGuire knows that. McGuire rests about the same age as Billy Kemp.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me if they're like 1A, 1B in this whole effort going through the season. But then furthering your point on Fedoni, I really liked how Wager even said, hey, great players pop out in advance, and he's one of them.
Yeah, they'll lay in the cut. Saying play clip 3 from Coach McGuire on. He's talking a little bit about on his experience at the professional level.
Well, what was awesome was I dealt with guys that were a lot older than me. One of the dudes I coached was Andre Roberts, who he made league minimum, which, league minimum's a lot of money, but he also owned 9 Zaxby's. So that was like a part-time gig for him. But no, seriously, I was around the best of the best, like DJ Moore, Baker Mayfield, Laviska Chenault, who I actually played with or played against in high school. Like I was on the phone with DJ this morning and got to say hello to his 2-year-old daughter, who, if you guys get a chance, go look her up on Instagram. She's 2 going on 25. But no, I loved every bit of being in Carolina.
And so if you just close your eyes and listen to the voice, the young guy. But if you get past that and get to the words, he's lived a lot of lives, it seems, right?
It's okay to be young, and it's also pretty okay to be ahead of your time.
Yeah.
And that's Garrett McGuire. And there's a lot of people like that.
Ahead of the curve ball.
Well, which was funny because it's just curve.
Stickler?
Well, because when he said it, I'm like, curveball. I'm just typing away as I'm doing something else. And I'm like, is Will Bolt at the podium or no? It's still Garrett McGuire. Although maybe there are some curveballs coming his wide receivers' directions. Who knows? But that's why I really like McGuire too, because I can personally relate to him on more levels than one.
I knew you would like him.
Right?
Young,
there are so many
confident.
Well, there's other coaches that I admire. Like I admire Matt Rule. I admire Tony White. I admire Evan Cooper, even though like I just went down like a list of age there. But there's not a lot of people that relate to me and to a lot of other young Nebraska fans out there. But that's Garrett McGuire. You can see yourself hanging with that person. You can, when he tells a story, there's similar stories to what you have, to what you know. When he made reference to the 2009 Big 12 championship at the end of that presser, like that was my first memory too, being somebody that's out of state.
Yeah.
Watching them play against Colt McCoy. And as I thought about it, I'm like, man, I didn't really realize how much into Big 12 football I was growing up, because Mizzou was in the Big 12 and they were successful from about 2005 to 2008.
Pickle was legit.
And then it was, now I'm into the Heisman Trophy ceremony when, Bradford and Colt McCoy and was it Tebow that year, I think, were all neck and neck for it. And then Bradford gets taken by the Rams, and it's like there was so much connection to where I grew up. But then it allowed me to follow along the next season and be like, I didn't really pay attention to Nebraska. Like, you can read about history, but when was that? 9? So I would have been 12 years old. When you're 12 years old, you're not paying attention to what happened when you were born. So when you watch Nebraska play in a Big 12 championship game and you're like, they're 22 in the nation, because that's what you pay attention to, right? When you're a young kid, you don't really pay attention to, look what they're doing on the football field. Here's what's good. Here's what's bad. You're looking at the play calling styles. No, you're looking at the ranking and you're like, that's a good team. I'm going to root for that team. That's my team. Not to say that Nebraska was my team, but it allowed me to kind of have some sort of a connection and understanding with Nebraska. 2009, that was for me. That was the same for Garrett McGuire. So it's great to have somebody to relate to whenever you look at history.
I go back to what T-Mac said yesterday, my buddy, because he kind of encapsulated in just a little bit of text. He brought the whole thing together, kind of what we've been saying for the last 9, 10, 12 years versus what we see right now. And it was in reference to what makes this staff believable, right? You're like, I ain't drinking any Kool-Aid. I was on the Matt Rule hype train since July, my guy. And I was like, yeah, that's right. He was number 1 in your top 5, and I didn't even have him.
Canned.
I didn't even have him in my top 5. I was like, I don't know. I think it's going to be a popular thing, but I don't know, right? I kind of had.
You had reservations.
So it wasn't, and remember what I said. It wasn't so much reservations about him as much as I felt like there were other guys that would be quicker.
Good explanation.
Ready to go.
What I mean by
right, because I was like, I think so. I think a lot of people like him. I'm hearing that, but I didn't put him in my top 5. But I go back to when T-Mac said, Coach Rule is experienced. These are his guys. He said no one on his, and this is huge because tell me you're not hearing this yesterday with Wager and McGuire. They're an extension of Coach Rule. There's no doubt about it. They don't get to the podium and say something different.
The way I walk, the way I talk.
It all matters.
And act is Coach Rule's DNA. That's what was said.
They're talking about 1%. So, and when I remember, T-Mac yesterday, he said no one on the staff is second guessing him, and he isn't threatened by anyone on the staff. One united voice. I'm gonna get back to something that Coach Rule said the other night. He talked about common language adding discipline. Common language adds discipline. It builds in discipline because you can hold people accountable, and it's a cultural checks and balance. Like, are we vibing on the same deal, right? The staff sounds like they're on the same deal. You remember those press conferences sometimes, and this will be the last time I do this today, where I compare and contrast former versus current, because that's not really my point as much as what I think you need to be successful. You would hear one guy say something at one press conference, in the very next press conference, a different guy would say something completely different.
Yeah, that may or may not contradict it.
We practiced against that. No, we didn't practice against that. This is what we did in practice. No, that's not what we did in practice. This is what we want to do. We want to run the ball. Hey, we got to throw it around. you're not going to hear that. So, and it's funny. I know a buddy that teaches Time for Two coaching, DJ Rizak, and he's always talking about common language. And he said, what I don't understand about people in positions of leadership is they always want to fast forward to the shared purpose, the outcome. Hey, what's the desired outcome? Well, we want to do this. A lot of people can know where they want to go and be unified in it. Hey, this is what we want to do for the show. Hey, this is how we want to grow the digital platform. Hey, but how are you using the common language and the protocol of discipline to get you to where you want to be for the shared purpose? You cannot have shared purpose without having common language. You have to know that we're vibing the same, because it builds in accountability and discipline. Coach Wager, Coach McGuire yesterday, they sound like everybody else on the staff in terms of delivering their message. And trust me, they couldn't be, not all of them, but they appear to be very different in their personalities. Now, could I see Coop and Satterfield going to shoot the breeze? Yeah, absolutely, because I think they'd get along. But I think they'd have vastly different interests, except they have one thing in common. They love football, right? That's the shared purpose. The common language, they talk the same.
100%.
And I just don't know why people in positions of leadership won't do the work on the front end. It's like denying the post or getting up underneath a defender to keep low post pass entries from happening in the post. You hear coaches say, do your work on the front end. Do your work on the front end. The shared language is hard. It is, because it has to be ingrained and implemented in the culture. And sometimes it seems tedious. And yeah, it comes across as a little sloganeerish, and there's too many sayings. And man, you sound just like I'm telling you, though, all good companies have it. Go to good businesses. Watch business models. They sound a lot alike. And leaders' jobs are to find the varying degrees of personalities that fit within the context of the common language. That's what good leaders go out and find.
You know what I've been saying? I've been beating the dead horse, DB, the CEO take. Like, you talk about a good business. We talk about Matt Rule being a CEO. He's planting a good business. Shane, can you play McGuire 9 for us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Well, we have this thing. We want to get 1% better, and I like to do that every single day. What's cool about my room is they're hard workers, and they are competitive, and you can see that on tape. Watching some last year's tape, watching guys that have been other places, whether that be other conferences or other schools. And so that standard's already set of how they want to play. And then you add our brand of football, being the toughest, hardest working, most competitive team in the country. That's kind of what I want to look like in April. That's essentially everything that you were just saying. Because what happened yesterday, what we reacted to Matt Rule saying at the coaching conference, or Marcus Satterfield or Tony White, the 1% better. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the very next day, it's not coincidence that Garrett McGuire is using the exact same language. They are all on the same page. Shane, play Wager 4 for me, please.
Well, no question that there'll be a great learning curve for me. But I have been a head coach for 26 years. I've been a high school coach for 31. With that has come all different types of human beings, different types of kids, different types of coaches, different types of schools. And so I hope that experience gives me the opportunity to bring some value to the program and bring some value to the coaches and kids that are in it.
Finding the right guy within their personality to accentuate what you're doing, but it has to go along with the common language and the shared purpose.
The goal was the first clip, getting 1% better every day. What I want to add to that goal is what Wager said right there. He admits that he's not 100% perfect. You can't get 1% better every day, unless
all the answers.
unless you're already there, unless you have that mastery that we talked about. And even if you do have mastery,
number 4 in terms of the learning.
Exactly, in terms of the learning curve. Recruiting will come easy for Wager. No doubt. He was a high school coach for multiple decades.
What, they win 143 games in 17 years?
Pretty okay, if you ask me. But nobody on this staff pretends to be something they're not.
It's 8 and some change a year, right?
Yeah. Well,
Gosh, I need Jamie.
Carry the 2. You do the math while I say this. Here's something that this all reminded me of. Do you remember the quote in Pursuit of Happiness when Will Smith goes into the boardroom meeting and he's wearing a painter's shirt?
Yeah.
And there's he's all different types of stains on it, right? And he says, I'm not the type of person that if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, or I'm sorry, I am the type of person that if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you that I don't know. But I bet you what, I know how to find the answer and I will find the answer. That encompasses this staff entirely. If there's a learning curve to be done, they're not afraid to find the answer to reach that point.
Hey, if you don't like this coaching clinic, tell me. Give me some feedback on what we're doing differently. Hey, listen, if I think we're going to win, if we don't win, there's one thing I'm going to do. I can promise you, I'm going to own it. I'm going to try to get better. Those were the words of the head coach, right? When you're admitting, I call it disarming, right? When you're just authentic and you're admitting character flaws and where you need to get better and what you're not good at and knowing yourself, like you give yourself a chance to have success, right? Because Coach Rule talked the other day about mission versus purpose. He said there are 2 distinct things and they need to be clear. The mission is to win championships. That is the mission. Make no mistake about it. It's to win championships. The purpose, though, is to teach, develop, and grow. If not you, then who? Right? So he wants it to be the coaches. Teach, grow, and develop. And I'm just thinking to myself, he just said in 5 minutes what I spent probably 60 shows giving analogies about. Hey, such and such, you can't be so outcome driven. You have to fall in love with the process. That's fancy for saying there's a difference between the mission and the purpose. The mission could be to kill the rhino, right? Go bag the cheetah, go grab the lion. But what do hunters do? Man, they fall in love with the process. Getting the bow ready. What kind of weaponry are we using? What's the course, the camaraderie, the grind of getting ready for the tracking? That's how they can repeat it over and over and over again. And when you have a good distinction between mission and purpose, it sounds like a what model? Oh, that's right. It sounds like a business model.
Oh, is this a business? Do they operate like a business?
I just, you heard it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You heard it yesterday, and I'm just like, I get it. They're his guys, and he didn't just luck into this, but you have to work at it. You have to work at it.
If you're still out there wondering why certain people are on this staff, just know they probably had on some really nice pants when they interviewed. Shane, nice work there. Thanks for having those clips ready. We'll set up the show and talk to Mike Schaefer here on Coffee and Cream next. Stay with us.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, my early thoughts are it's all about building a relationship with these guys right now. And I've had a couple of opportunities to have dinner with them and sit down individually, build those relationships. You can't have rules without relationships. And so that's the phase that we're in. My early impressions are I look forward to seeing them every single day. I can't wait to have the opportunity to coach them. And more importantly, I can't wait to have an opportunity to build a lifelong relationship with the guys that I coach.
Can't have rules without relationships.
How do you think he spells rules?
R-H-U-L-E-S.
It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, where we spell words that we know.
And we do a little math, too.
Kind of.
17 years, 143 wins, 8.4 wins a season.
According to Amazing Daniel, we may not know
Hey,
our pop culture, but boy, when it comes to spelling and math, we are on point.
Do you feel like I've gotten you in kind of a little a tough sitch? Because guys that come support us, and I think it's like family, right? Like they're the hardest on you. Like two of our snarkiest folks are Hockey Dad and the Amazing Daniel. Yet they support us through and through. Without
That's good friends right there.
Iron sharpens iron, and sometimes you get a few sparks. I'm still mad at Jay Rich.
You couldn't sleep last night?
Bro. So you know how matter of fact he was on Twitter when he goes, man, you guys are off the rails, which is bound to happen. But then he's like in the same thought, he's like, it's a nail in your tire. Get it fixed. Right? I was like, not a nail. Fudge, I filled this thing up 3 times in, 30 days. If it's a nail, it's an awful slow leak, buddy. It's probably something else. It's the cold weather.
And we'll get into your Dingman's experience in a few moments. But let's welcome in Mike Schaefer. He's with us now here on the show. Mike, good morning.
Morning, guys. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to see you.
I am happy to be talking to you voice to voice, man. Good on you, buddy. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's been good to dive back into a little bit of work this week after a few weeks off, and then trying to figure out who Nebraska added at the end of the cycle when I completely checked out, when assuming there'd maybe be like 1 or 2 people, and there's 7, and I had a little to learn.
Hey, good to have you back, my guy. Appreciate you getting back at it this week. As you kind of got back in the saddle, we're talking about like common language and business models and mission versus purpose. You're pretty cool with this right now in terms of the infrastructure, putting the workout in front of football so they can do football well. Do you like kind of the order of operations in which Coach Rule's staff has started to attack this job?
Well, I mean, it's early enough, and I don't know that I have a great read on everything, but I like the enthusiasm in which they've attacked things. So I think maybe perhaps even more than the order of how it's gone, or necessarily being able to poke through what it is that they're trying to do. I like the way that they've attacked it with enthusiasm. I mean, I don't know if it speaks exactly to what you're asking, but I continue to be pretty thrilled by what I saw from Ed Foley over the last 2 months, and just getting out to different places. Obviously, I spent a lot of time up in Columbus, and I mean, I can't even begin to tell you what it means to the coaching staffs up there at Lakeview and Columbus High and SCOTUS to have, a coach come through. And it's not that place is going to produce a ton of D1 talent, but Garrett Oakley is at Kansas State now, and Ernest Hausman was at Nebraska last year. So it's a place that, is going to have players every now and then. And more than that, I just think people like to feel that connection to Nebraska football. And so for Coach Foley to kind of create that connection across a large chunk of the state, and I anticipate that this will be a thing that he just sort of does off and on in the spring and then again in the winter, I think that's a lot of goodwill being added to it. And, Matt Rule, Brunch said this on our podcast earlier this week, and I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, everything Matt Rule told us he was going to do or going to be has largely been true. And so he kind of laid it all out there in front of us in that opening press conference, and he wanted a young, hungry staff. And I think having watched a lot of these guys get up and speak over the last couple of weeks, it feels like he's really accomplished that mission. And then he's got that elder statesman and Ed Foley, who seems to be kind of an everyman that's able to fit both with recruits and coaches and players and fans. And I think that's a great thing too.
Yeah, you won't ever get that dishonest Matt Rule. I don't think that's in his blood, in his nature. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about enthusiasm. You're not the only one that I think is enthused by how he and the rest of his staff have been going about their business early on. Mike, you released your Super 6 rankings last night, and, we've been asking a lot of other media members in town who they like. We kind of went through it a little bit last week too on our show to break down our thoughts more. But anything really stick out to you as you were compiling the Super Six rankings this year?
Yeah, I mean it's always sort of fun because you don't know what the breakdown of people, and I think Damon was like this, where I don't know that he had a transfer player on his Super Six.
Nor
And
did
you have
I.
some people, yeah, and you have some people that had 5 out of 6 spots as transfer players. So, I mean, because I offer absolutely no guidance for how people should pick their Super Six, it has now just really led to kind of a sort of unique setup where you don't get a single player that's on every ballot anymore. I think Jeff Sims was the most at like 17 out of 24. Which isn't particularly good. I mean, there's years where you get guys that are 24 out of 24. But I do think that we saw, there's a handful of high school guys where there seems to be a lot more excitement than maybe some others. I was a little surprised that Riley Van Poppel ended up with all 3 of myself, Brunts, and BC had him at number 1. Damon had him at number 1. That's a guy that I've been excited about for a long time, going back to his recruitment from the previous staff. And I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be James Lynch because it's pretty hard to be a unanimous All-American, but if he can be like 3/5 of James Lynch for Nebraska, I mean, that I think that Matt Rule and James Lynch are synonymous. And so I think that maybe there's a lot of transposing with Riley Van Poppel, but I just look at what they're doing with that defensive line, and I have so much more hope for what's happening up front, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, than where I've been the last couple of years. So I'm not surprised to see that maybe Van Poppel is the face of that and that excitement. Other things, the sleepers are always really interesting. You had a sleeper vote for a player that was someone's number 1 player in the Super Six. So that's always, kind of fun. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for Tristan Alvano. I think that state title game, and I'm not just saying this because Damon's sitting there in his jacket and he's all excited about it still. I think that state title game resonates with a lot of people, and I think having a kicker that there's confidence in would be a big thing. But that's going to be an interesting battle between him and Bleak Road, because I don't think Bleak Road's going anywhere. So, there's just kind of the small stuff that I pulled out of that. I don't want to take up too much time just going over it, but it's always fascinating to me how things shake out in the Super Six.
Hey, can you have competitors within the same class for validations, i.e. like a Jaden Dawson, a Malachi Coleman? Because I think that is kind of taking on a nice little fun debate on its own amongst kind of some media brethren that have a lot, because a lot of those guys were in a lot of people's Super Six.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can have that. I think we've seen that a lot of the times. I mean, I don't know how everyone always sort of views it, but you have moments where you have Aaron Green, Braylon Hurd, Amir Abdullah. Someone's going to rise to the top. Someone's going to transfer out. And in some cases, 2 guys transfer out. So, we want to believe that everybody enters this thing as best of friends and there's no rivalries or competition or whatever, but that's never the case. And so whether it's at the wide receiver position or the offensive line or the defensive line, those are 3 areas where I feel like they really kind of restock the room. And I would look for that competition. And I think Doss Coleman is a really good one, because I think if you ask some people, they think Malachi Coleman could be ready to go right when he gets on campus. You ask others, they think he's going to need more time. I think a guy like Jaden Doss is more likely to make an immediate impact than a Malachi Coleman is, but maybe Malachi Coleman has more long-term helium. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can kind of size that one up. And they're wildly different in their usage and how they were used in high school and everything else too. So if you're going to pick two high school guys and just sort of want to watch their career arcs, those are 2 really interesting ones that I think, if Nebraska is blessed, both of them could end up being pretty good players in the future.
Yeah, Sledge, Catula, there's a couple of those.
Yeah.
Interior-wise, it should be fun.
Mike, we need to get you on a longer form segment because we ran out of time.
I talk too much. That's a polite way of saying I talk too much.
No, because I have more I want to pick your brain about, but we just ran out of time this segment. But we appreciate you
back for part of the dump, because I got some things I want to talk about too. Jake, there's
you
not
my number, Damon. You can call me.
There's not enough of you.
Hey, thanks, man. We really appreciate your time, and have a good Friday.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Hey, thank you. And that's Mike Schaefer. Coming up next, JJ Zumbrennen, Elkhorn South's boys basketball head coach. He's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show. We'll get into some NFL talk at the top of the hour, but what we like to do every Friday is take a look around the high school ranks and check out some of the coaches that help deliver some successful seasons, and one of them is one right over in Elkhorn. Elkhorn South's boys basketball head coach, J.J. Zumbrennen, on with us now. Coach, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Coach, fantastic, man. I'm a big fan, so probably it's a bigger deal to me than it is to you.
Hey, well, I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on.
Hey, you know, some people are calling you the Garrett McGuire of high school basketball coaches. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's funny. I appreciate that.
Hey, you know, but for real, yeah, first year head coach, right? I'm right when I say that?
Yes.
So one of the youngest, if not the youngest head coach in the state. I know you're the youngest in the metro at least, but the team currently ranked 8th in the class. What has this opportunity in year one meant to you so far?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I got to say is it's an absolute blast. I mean, it's going so fast. I'm having so much fun while I'm doing it. And the easiest part, or the part that makes my job the easiest, is the kids. Obviously, we've got a really good group of seniors, led by Alec Noonan and Evan Warner, Caden Stone. All of our seniors have been absolutely fantastic for us this year. And one of the things that has meant the most to me, at least at this point, is I was actually their freshman coach.
Yep.
So I've been around these guys for a couple of years now. And so our relationship has been able to grow. I feel like they trust me and I know I trust them. And it's ultimately been really beneficial for us.
Coach, it's kind of cool. I'm a closet stalker. I've been around this deal forever, played against Warner since Caleb was young. I've watched you come up as an alum. One of the things that I think is cool is I'm always in gyms, right? You do a lot of your own scouting, right? At least it seems that way because I see you at other games with the notepad and you kind of blend in. We've referenced your age. Now to be the last time I do that, but is that something like your energy, kind of where you are, your own set of eyes? Is that part of the deal, or is that just in the DNA?
Well, I think part of the reason that it is that way is that that's the culture that's been at Elkhorn South since I arrived there. It's nothing new. It's nothing out of the ordinary. That started with Alex Baugh, and it continued with Nolan Riley. That if there's something that we can control, we're going to try to control it. And if I can go to games and I can see stuff on Huddle and give our guys the best opportunity to take something away from an opponent or expose something from an opponent, then we're going to absolutely put ourselves in that position.
Coach, I don't know if I've ever seen a faster path to becoming a varsity head basketball coach. I mean, like you said, you jumped from freshman to varsity in like 3 years' time. If you blinked, you would have missed it. How do you avoid getting caught up in those moments? And did you or have you ever sat back, took a breath, and reflected on the ride to this point?
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey. I actually currently teach at Elkhorn High School, so I flip-flop across the Elkhorn Public Schools district. And so I started as a reserve coach when I was student teaching here. Did freshman for 2 years, did JV for a year, and then Nolan Riley left, and the position was open. And so it has been a really quick process and a really quick journey. And one of the things that we talk about, with my assistants all the time is there's really two paths to becoming, a head coach. You put in your time and you do a lot of assistant work and you grow your knowledge and you're able to get to that point. And then the other side of things is kind of trial by fire. And that's kind of what we're experiencing right now is we got to learn stuff on the fly and figure out how to make things work for us and adjust. Even if we don't know what's going on, we make it seem like we do, try to spin it like we do. And so that's been one of the biggest things, especially I talk about with my wife all the time, is it's gone so fast that right now I don't think I've had much of a time to just sit back and be like, whoa, this is really cool. But having these conversations, I guess, kind of forces me to do that. And I'm just so grateful and honored to be able to do this.
Coach, you ooze coaching through and through. Your vibe, your energy. I've obviously watched you up close. You referenced your wife. She has to know that she married a coach, which I think is part of it when you're going to have a successful relationship, because you grind, man. I could just see you being the type of person that in season, you're going to put in some long hours, and it's an energy thing. As your team, the way they play, they had to have picked up on your work ethic, because they play their rear end off regardless of the score.
And like you said, man, that's a credit to them. I think that the culture that has been established at Elkhorn South is one of hard work. It's always been that way. And so I was grateful and very beneficial to step into that and just try to continue that. And the 5 seniors that we have, as well as all of our other guys, and now that I have an opportunity, I got to give a shout out to our JV guys as well, because man, they busted on a daily basis and make everybody else better too. But the biggest piece is, again, that's something that we can control. If we can control our work ethic and how good of teammates we are, then the ball's going to go in the hoop more. We're going to get more stops on the defensive end. So I think guys have bought into that message and understand that is a part of winning. And sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way and things aren't always going to be great, but this is a resilient group that, like you said, plays their butts off.
We're talking to JJ Zumbrennen, Elkhorn South's boys basketball head coach. Coach, moving at the same pace as one of your previous answers, and at the same pace as many of your upperclassmen, as you said, who on this roster have you seen make the biggest strides in regards to development as a player today?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at, just from where we have been at the last couple of years. Obviously, Alec Noonan has been, he was a stud for us last year and continues to be a stud for us this year. Evan Warner got a little bit of time varsity-wise last year, but has really grown in his role because, holy moly, man, he can shoot the crap out of the basketball. And he's grown in terms of his, defensive skill as well. We always put him on, the opposing team's best 3-point shooter because he's really good in our gap and like closing out. Jackson Moeller-Swan played quite a bit last year, started for us last year, and he's been a really good leader, senior point guard for us. Gavin Hornbacher has grown a lot in his role, but I think probably the guy that's grown the most is Caden Stone. He didn't get a ton of minutes last year varsity-wise, and the dude just grinded. I mean, he was at every single open gym, every single skills session, calling me on Sundays, trying to get into the gym. And it's a testament to that work ethic. And he does all the little things. He's going to guard the opposing team's best player. He's going to knock down open shots. He's going to screen. He's going to cut well. So I got to give a lot of props to C Stone because he's been kind of a rock for us.
Coach, you came back on the back end of the doubleheader and you got Central and a grinder, and I'm the least bit surprised. We had talked to Coach Chubbuck Jr. that morning, and they had some time off, and I wondered out loud after we talked to him, I said, gosh, Elkhorn South's going to have to play at Westside. They got a double dip against the team that's kind of laying in the cut. The game against Westside I want to go back to because I think it's interesting. You have this demeanor, right? The clean-cut, good-looking, energy guy. Your team, though, that game was chippy, and it was – and if you take my kid out of it and the team, I love the way the game was played because it was competitive. When the score got a little large, you surged right back. Your demeanor never changed. The crowd was into it. I went up to Alec after the game and I said, man, your resolve, your poise, I love watching you play. How much it went, and I know it's not just a Noonan thing. Evan shot the heck out of the ball. Hornbacher was a handful, just his toughness, apparently the cast and all that's behind him. Your team, I got to know how the personality, the demeanor meets the team, because the toughness is something that I think people don't catch when they watch you guys on Huddle.
Yeah, and I think that, this is a quote from Mike Tomlin, but we say it all the time, that the standard is the standard. And so, we have set, we like to think that we have set this standard. And so if we're not meeting that, during a stretch of the game, or we're not practicing well, we challenge people and tell them, listen, man, you have set the foundation, you have set the pillars of our program. And if you're not going to live up to that, then we've got to do something different. And this group in particular really responds to that. They're not a group that likes to be told how well everything is going and we're doing everything so great. They want to be pointed out when things aren't going well. And, again, that's 100% them. I don't think that's anything that myself or our coaching staff has done. They're a really great group of kids and want to be the best version of themselves.
Coach, quickly here, got about a minute. Your guys picked up a pair of wins the last 2 times out, have some momentum going into tonight's matchup against Millard West, a team you've already seen this year. Has the scout changed at all, without giving away too many details?
Yeah, I would say that they're playing a little bit faster than last time we played them, and we've changed up a little bit what we're doing defensively, and so I think that every game that they play is close, and so we anticipate a dogfight tonight. I know the guys are ready to go, and so am I.
Yeah, you were the unfortunate victim of an 8:30 tip the last time I think you guys saw them, if I remember right. So this one will be different. Coach, I'm a fan, man. Best wishes to you going forward.
Hey, guys, thank you. I appreciate you having me on this morning.
Hey, thank you, JJ. JJ Zumbrennen, Elkhorn South boys basketball head coach right there. Let's change gears. We'll talk Super Bowl with some NFL guests next segment.
Rapid fire.
Not only are we talking to the Chiefs, but the Eagles in the same segment. We don't normally do that, but we're double dipping at the 8 o'clock mark.
Let's get it.
Stick around. We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hale Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
My mom's everything. I love her to death. And right now, I think she's kind of cheering for the Eagles because of her grandkids, but it's all right. I know where her heart is.
It's very cool. It's very cool, and it's an honor to be able to carry that torch. You know, I always told myself I wanted to blaze those trails and potentially create new ones. So I have a lot of respect for all of them.
You heard from Travis Kelce. You heard from Jalen Hurts, two of the big impact guys at this year's Super Bowl. Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hale Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hale Varsity Club. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers. And now let's welcome in our first guest of the segment. He's a Chiefs analyst for The Athletic, Seth Keysor. Seth, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
Good, Seth. Good.
Hey, it must feel pretty nice to know that a team that you're covering has had the success that they've had in recent years, making trips to the Super Bowl, winning at least one Super Bowl in that time, and now they're back again in a year that many thought wasn't going to be their year. What has it been like covering this Chiefs team this year in particular?
It has been a very, very fun time to cover the Chiefs. I started covering them probably, I think it was about 2011. And so I went through the 2012 season where they were clearly the worst team in football. And so this is different. It's been a lot of fun. It ends up being a lot longer throughout the year because you end up with an extra month every single year as they play multiple extra games. And this year in particular, you kind of alluded to the expectations that people had. And it's been really interesting watching them evolve and adapt and kind of enter this new phase of the Mahomes era and doing it so seamlessly that they end up in the Super Bowl in a year that's supposed to be a retooling one.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let me ask you something, Seth, because you're close to this deal, and I feel like they're two separate things, but maybe they're not. Can I talk about the greatness of the Kansas City Chiefs and talk about Patrick Mahomes and separate it from what Veach and company, and I know Mahomes is part of the draft, so that's where it gets a little convoluted. But, I mean, there's some Karlaftis, there's some Gays, there's some Nick Boltons, there's the managing of the cap. Can I talk about the Chiefs' rise to always being on the precipice of playing for Super Bowls and separate the front office from Patrick Mahomes' brilliance?
I think you can a little bit at this point. I think it was hard for people to do that before the last couple of years, especially because a lot of the blue chip players they had when they won it in 2019 were considered, from the former regime. And so one thing that this particular front office has done is after the 2018 season ended with obviously kind of a disastrous defense and, lining up offsides, you don't make the Super Bowl, they had to completely revamp the defense to go from terrible to at least passable, right? And then after they won the Super Bowl and, they tried to run it back, and then they obviously had a bunch of injuries to the offensive line, they had to completely revamp the offensive line. And then this year they had to once again completely revamp the defense as guys aged out, contracts got bad, etc. And so they've really had to create multiple iterations of the team around Patrick Mahomes. The roster now is very different than the roster from 2019 and 2020. So I think it's entirely appropriate to talk about the general manager and the job Brett Veach has done in bringing in new, fresh talent through all avenues, not just the draft, although he's crushed the last couple drafts,
yes,
but also, bringing in, a few more high-end free agents, and then also bringing in, churning through veterans like a Carlos Dunlap type guy who plays a niche role, but a valuable one. And that's where I think it's really appropriate to separate the two because you need that even around a great quarterback.
Turn your attention here, Seth, to the coaching staff, in particular, Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. The Super Bowl is where we see the gutsiest play calls come out. We've seen coaches take risks all the time when it comes to play calling. With how much film guys watch leading up to the Super Bowl and knowing how unique the Chiefs are when they call plays on offense, do you think they'll get creative here, or do you think they'll stick to what they know works?
I think you're going to see a combination of both. Andy Reid generally tends to be kind of a combination of both. He changes things up more on a macro scale in the off season, and then throughout the course of the year, it's kind of a slow evolution based on the personnel they have. And so he's not necessarily a game-to-game guy. It just varies. You see little things. They do what they do, but they alter what they do because they do so many things, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a combination of both. He's going to do what he does, but what he does, because his playbook is so vast, it varies depending on matchup. So say, for example, here with the really great pass rush of the Eagles, I expect to see some of the things that he usually does to try to slow down a pass rush with some of the screens to try to take advantage of that linebacker group, some of the jet sweep stuff, some RPOs, just to really cause the pass rushers to get in their own heads and hesitate.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that's the game within the game for me, Seth. Total football junkie, being a coach. Like Spags, going against Sirianni, it's almost like a mirror version because Kansas City's RPO game is pretty filthy. But it's not to be outdone by what Philly does with their RPO game, stressing those flat defenders too. Is there some, I don't know, comfort's too strong of a word. Is there some ease in familiarity with how the RPO game works when Spags is trying to look at what to do against the Eagles?
I think where the familiarity might be for Spags is just how long he's been doing this. Obviously, it helps having Andy on the opposite side to where, you know how your offense works. Yeah. And so you know some of the rules with RPOs in general. But I think the advantage there really is the fact that Steve Spagnuolo's been doing this for decades. And so there really isn't a lot of genuinely new stuff in football. It's recycled from either the pro level or the high school level or the college level. And once you've been around long enough, you see things kind of cycle back and forth. Like, this year is the return of the power running back, right? And the power rush attack as defenses have gotten lighter and lighter over the last few years to deal with the passing game. So I think that's where the advantage is. But obviously practicing against some of that stuff every day, your defenses, your players, they see a little more of it. Now, the way the Chiefs operate RPOs, and you kind of alluded to this, is pretty different than how the Eagles do it. They're a lot more likely to hit the R on that, and that's because their offensive line is so good. But I do think there's an advantage there, both in Spagnuolo's experience and their players having dealt with it.
We're talking to Seth Keysor at RealMN Chiefs fan on Twitter. He's the Chiefs analyst for The Athletic. Seth, keep it with the defense here because we've seen a lot of storylines come out about Frank Clark and how he stepped up and Chris Jones. And then we talked already about what the front office has been able to do, and they get a guy like Karlaftis out of the draft. In a year that people didn't have very high expectation for the Chiefs defense, how would you say they grade up there with the best in football this year?
I would put the Chiefs defense with where they're at right now is they're about an average defense, maybe a little above average. And there's a lot of variance to them because they are starting so many young guys. And one of the things with rookies is that variance. With an average player, you usually don't have them just play average all the time, right? They're either playing a little above or a little below or way above or way below. And that's where I think you see that kind of on a game-by-game basis with the Chiefs. You're going to see a little bit of inconsistency. On the plus side, they're playing as well as they've played all year, at least over the course of the last month and a half or so. And so I think they've started to crack into that average to above average range with a good pass rush, and their coverage is just continuing to tighten up on the back end. So they've been on the upswing for the last couple months, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues against such a great offense.
Seth, last one for me. Let's get you out of here on this. In a game that is just a 1.5 point difference, really good quarterback play. Right, we've heard all the matchups. We've been through it. The game within the game could be time management in a close game. Both coaches have been a little maligned for being aggressive, not being aggressive, clock management. You know the deal with Andy Reid, covering these guys for so long. Will it come down to that, in your opinion? And if so, do you give the advantage to the veteran?
I think if it comes down to game management stuff, that is one thing that Reed has been a lot better at over the last, probably I'd say 3 years. And, Mahomes cures a lot of ailments, right? Because there's a big advantage where, wow, we didn't handle the clock quite how we should, but we only need 13 seconds anyway. So whatever. That's certainly helpful. Yeah. But I think some of those in-game management things, I might give the slight edge to Sirianni just because of his aggressiveness. And when you have as much talent as they do, that aggressiveness often pays off. So if you end up with a game that's on that thin of a razor's edge, I think I'd give the advantage to him, which is, a lot of the advantages I think go to Andy with his experience. But in that area, I'd actually give it to Sirianni.
Hey, before we let you go real fast, MVP bold prediction. Do not give an explanation. Just give me a short answer here.
Patrick Mahomes.
And that is
Safety.
Definitely the safe bet. Hey, thanks, Seth. We appreciate you. And have some fun on Sunday.
Thanks, Seth.
Hey. Yep, absolutely. I appreciate you guys.
That's Seth Keysor, Chiefs analyst for The Athletic. Let's change gears here. Let's talk Eagles now with the Eagles NFL writer for the Delaware News Journal. It's Martin Frank. Martin, good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Good morning, Martin. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you guys?
Good.
Hey, we're having a blast talking some Super Bowl talk here on the show. And something that I thought about last night when Jalen Hurts came in second in the MVP voting race, some people are still all out on Jalen Hurts being a good quarterback. I mean, the 49ers roster is one team that isn't holding back feelings right now. And he just never gets a lot of credit because of how just well put together that Eagles team is. Do you think the reason for this is because, if we're talking 49ers here, that, they're salty because of the NFC Championship loss? Or do you think this hate will just constantly follow Jalen Hurts throughout his career? Because it seems like even if he wins the Super Bowl, he'd be the last person to be credited.
Yeah, I find it kind of strange because if you look at his overall body of work during his career, when he was drafted in the second round, he played the last 4.5 games, in place of Carson Wentz, who got benched, and he only completed 51% of his passes. Okay, well, it's 4 games, doesn't really, it's not really a good gauge. And the next year, the Eagles they started out 2-5. He was throwing the ball a lot, but, it wasn't very accurate. He, they went to a run-based offense, and they won 7 of the last 10 and made the playoffs, and he completed 61% of his passes. You're okay, he's a little bit better, but if he's going to be in that upper echelon of quarterbacks, he's got to improve that completion percentage by a lot. And he did. I mean, they went out and got A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith is in his second year. Dallas Goedert's one of the better tight ends in the NFL. And he improved his completion percentage to 66.5%. He went 14-1 as a starter. I mean, I'm not really sure what else he could do. I mean, when the Eagles needed him to throw the ball, he did, and he beat teams with his arms. When they needed him to run the ball, he did, and he rushed for 760 yards. So, I don't know. I don't really understand. I mean, you look at the 49ers game, he's playing on a sprained shoulder. He doesn't have great passing stats. I think he threw for 120 yards. But the Eagles won 31-7. I mean, he didn't have to throw the ball in the second half. The Eagles ran the ball 44 times. So, I don't know. It just doesn't really make sense. He's shown all year that he can win either by throwing the ball or running the ball. He's not going to light up the scoreboard like Patrick Mahomes does. Mahomes threw for 5,200 yards, but he can get the job done. I mean, he's proved that. So I'm not really sure where all this Jalen Hurts disrespect comes from.
That's interesting. A guy goes 66%. He's thrown for 3,800 yards. He's 22-6 touchdowns, interceptions. But let me ask you this, Martin, because his fingerprints. I got into a knockdown, drag-out debate a couple years ago over Jalen Hurts and whether to spend a second-round pick. And I like winners just because I coached for so long. I'm going with guys that are historically win. Hurts is a winner. His personality oozes winning. Are you surprised in a city that has a guy like trust the process, Joel Embiid, that Hurts has been able to capture the hearts of Philly fans? I know a couple guys I know, Stoll in particular. You can't keep Hurts merchandise on the shelf. His temperament dictates the Eagles. His philosophy is embodied in the Eagles. Like, are you surprised at how quickly he's won that city and team over?
I am in a way, but like one thing, like a lot of the Eagles players, and I'm speaking specifically about veteran guys like Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, guys who've been there for 10 years or more. I mean, Jason Kelsey did not retire because he trusted Jalen Hurts that much. Like, look at it this way. Kelsey's been in the league since 2011, probably the best center or one of the best centers in Eagles history. After the 2020 season, when Hurts took over for those last 4.5 games, the Eagles were a disaster. They were 4-11-1. They fired their coach. They traded Carson Wentz, and everyone thought for sure that was it for Kelsey. Like, why would he come back? And he did, and he said, because I see the potential in this team, and I see the potential with Jalen Hurts. So, like, by then he'd already made an impression on veteran guys like that he had the stuff, the leadership, to take this team to the level they're at right now. So when you see guys like Kelsey and Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham talking that way about Hurts, then you got something special. And I think people in Philadelphia won to that once they saw, like, the Eagles rally to make the playoffs last year, and then even more so this year. So it's just been, and everyone, like, talks about his leadership. Like, just, he's only 24 years old. I mean, a lot of this is, like, incredible, but he did that at Alabama. He won the championship as a true freshman. He lost his job. He handled that professionally. And then he went to Oklahoma and was second in the Heisman, took them to the playoffs. So, he has a history of that. It's a body of work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
We're talking to Martin Frank, Eagles NFL writer for the Delaware News Journal. Martin, you talk about leadership and you talk about disrespect. Somebody that kind of fits that mold too is Nick Sirianni. And, after the Eagles moved on from Doug Peterson, it was kind of surprising that you moved away so quickly from a Super Bowl winning head coach. Not to say that, it wasn't the right move. Nick Sirianni brings the team to the Super Bowl in his first year. So, is that a credit to him being able to handle that sort of pressure, or do you kind of side with those that say, hey, he got put into a really easy, nice situation?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, when he took over last year, his first press conference, he was like stumbling and awful. He'd never been a head coach at any level before. And I just remember, like, people in Philly were like, who is this guy? Who did they just hire? Like, he wasn't being interviewed by anybody else.
He was a meme. He was part of memes.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, before the draft, he's telling us, I play like rock, paper, scissors with, draft picks to see what, see what they're about. And like, what? And then, like, they start out 2-5, and he shows his team a picture of a flower pot with roots growing underneath the ground, and everyone thought, like, well, who is this guy? What's he doing? And then, they end up making the playoffs. And then, this year, they just take off, and people, like, kind of warmed up to him. They kind of realized, he's fiery. He'll get in people's faces. There was a game against the Colts in November. It was about a week or so after they fired Frank Reich, who was Sirianni's mentor. Sirianni was his offensive coordinator with the Colts before getting the Eagles job. And, the Eagles win in the last minute, 17-16, and he climbs up onto the bench and he starts yelling at the fans, like, kind of like F you for firing Frank Reich. And people in Philly love that fiery attitude. He's done that, like coming off the field during home games and stuff like that. So yeah, I think he's kind of won people over in Philly. Like at first they're like, who is this guy and what is he doing? He seems overwhelmed, but he's turned it around and people like really like his, Philly fiery fighting attitude and stuff. It's really played over well here.
You could tell this team is built with Reddick and Edwards to play behind, Fletcher Cox and Grams and Hargrave and those guys. But Gannon's done a good job kind of piecemealing the secondary together, right, with Bradbury and veteran Slay. But you got the young guys in Gardner Johnson and Blankenship. When you look at some underlying keys, man, how important or critical do you think it is how Gannon, who was also the defensive backs coach in Indy when Sirianni was there, how important is it that you think that secondary is better outside of the pass rush, or are those two things just intertwined?
I think they're definitely intertwined because, you look at Slay and Bradbury, both had Pro Bowl seasons, but they don't have to cover their receivers as long because the defensive line is just sending waves and waves after the quarterback. Like you mentioned, the defensive tackles, like they got 5.
Yeah, Jordan Davis, Linval Joseph.
It's just nonstop. You got Fletcher Cox and Hargrave. Then you got, Dominican Sue and Linval Joseph. And then you got Jordan Davis, the first-round pick. So that's like 5 guys nonstop, rotating in and out, getting after the quarterback. You got Brandon Graham, you got Josh Sweat, you got Hassan Reddick. They got 4 guys who had at least 10 sacks. They came within 2 sacks of the Bears' all-time sacks record. So, like, and it's clear, like, how they do it. They get pressure on the quarterback. They make him throw before he's ready. And, the defensive backs that you mentioned just feast on that. Slay and Bradbury don't have to cover as long. Gardner Johnson can, like, watch guys coming over the middle and, a bad pass, he's right there to pick it off. He had 6 interceptions and he missed 5 games. So, yeah, it's him and him, definitely.
Martin, we appreciate your time today. But before we let you go, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, no explanation needed. Give me your MVP and bold prediction.
Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think that would be an easy one. And I predict this. It's going to be a great game, high scoring. I think the Eagles win 37-33.
Oh, thank you, Martin. We appreciate your time this morning and enjoy Super Bowl Sunday.
Thanks, Martin.
All right. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Hey, that score right there, it's kind of close to the one that everybody's been predicting on Twitter. What do you know the story behind that? Like, I've seen it like pop around. It's like a Pro Football Reference score, but it says 37-34 actually in favor of the Eagles.
Am I crazy? I don't think they score a ton of points.
What's the over-under set at?
I can't read it. Is that 50 and a half?
I can't read.
Is that 50 and a half?
That is 50 and a half.
I don't think it goes over.
Man, if people are predicting 70
people think
points,
this is going to be high scoring. I don't.
We'll see. We will have to see. Hey, if you are having a Super Bowl party, maybe you should have these beers on your list. Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the Copper Alt, Dope Juicy IPA, Mosaic IPA. All are from Zipline. All are fantastic. And I'll be having one after the show today. Coming up next, have you been paying attention to storylines? That's what I want to tell you.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hale Varsity Radio.
A lot. Yeah. So I call him about every night. Just, ask him for help. He's his best recruiter. I tell that to everybody. You see him, he goes out on the road by himself, which, there's a lot of respect behind that. And I'm just always like trying to get his evaluation of me. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? And that's what's so cool about me is like I'm the son of a coach. So I spent 18 years with best coach I know. We were under the same roof, you know that, Max. You know how close him and I are. But so like I'll ask him about recruiting, but mainly he just keeps going, talk to your players, talk to their players' parents. If you guys were down there 10 minutes ago, there were 6 guys in my room just hanging out. And I was like, hey, guys, I got honey buns. I got Pop-Tarts. Come on, come get one, just sit there, hang out with me as I'm freaking watching tape and doing all that.
Garrett McGuire speaking my language. I'll take a Pop-Tart.
Oh man.
Hey, grab a Pop-Tart and watch me play. It's
You
coffee
didn't
and
bring any
cream.
Pop-Tarts this morning.
Nah, I ran out.
Oh, did you?
Ashley even made a comment last night. She goes, dude, you ate all the Pop-Tarts. I'm like, there was one left.
Hey, what's your go-to?
Brown sugar is my favorite. OG.
Okay, so what did you bring yesterday that had
Cookies
the
and
chocolate?
cream.
Okay.
I like chocolate chip cookie dough. Wild berry is a good Pop-Tart as well. You can go like OG too with blueberry and strawberry, but
You're wild,
she's
man.
like, she likes the double chocolate fudge one. They have a hot fudge sundae, which is just okay.
Dude, what is wrong with you?
They also have a sugar cookie around Christmas time, and dude, the sugar cookie is
Are you listening to this guy over here?
fire.
You know who's kind of like you? Kugler's like that too. He's particular about his Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, a little bit.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize they had all those flavors. We went in waves.
They probably have 20
sometimes the kids like them, sometimes they don't.
No, they're just so convenient. They're so tasty.
Warmed or not warmed?
I'm a not warmed guy.
Yeah, I don't. So here's the full disclosure. I don't eat either one of those things. I would love to eat an iced honey bun, but they have fallen off in terms of quality. So I don't even, like, if I'm going to go there with a sweet, I'm not going to waste it on an iced honey bun or a glazed honey bun.
You know,
and I'm certainly not eating Pop-Tarts.
What ruined it for me was the honey buns in the vending machine.
Yeah.
Because they've been sitting in there for God knows how long.
Well, everybody tells me I'm sleeping on zebra cakes. Am I sleeping on zebra cakes?
No, I'm not much of a Little Debbie guy.
Oh, my guy, Degenerate Aaron. He is, by the way, he could use some thoughts and prayers out here today. He is a snack aisle junkie and knows everything about Debbie and how little she is. It's unbelievable. His pantry looks like a grocery store.
Well, like Debbie Gibson?
Who's she? Oh, that's the singer, right?
Yeah, it's the singer.
Did you did you have a poster?
I did not.
Did that help you get to 2 minutes? 2 minutes.
I don't know. Ask your buddy. Ask your buddy. He knows about Debbie.
Whoa.
Little Debbie.
Speaking of singers, DB,
Is that what you call it?
Rihanna came out and said you're the best radio personality in the state of Nebraska. How does that make you feel?
Did she?
Mm-hmm.
Why would Rihanna say that?
She did. She just said it.
What?
Yeah, she came out and said DB is the best radio personality in the state of Nebraska.
I don't believe it. I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
You know the question Patrick Mahomes was asked by the reporter?
Yes.
Hey, Rihanna said you're the best.
Oh, you're so funny, Drew Down. But you know why? You know what had me is like you don't know me in my former life. Like I have a thing about Rihanna.
Even better.
No, here's why.
Maybe I'm just 2 steps ahead of you.
She ruined Matt Kemp's career. Matt Kemp was my guy.
Oh,
and because he was
in the LA Dodgers.
Because he was captivated and smitten by Rihanna, he let balls bounce off his head and was getting picked off at first base. It's unbelievable. My dude was spending more time on yachts with Rihanna than he was working on his game. I'm very mad at Rihanna.
Didn't Darius Geis spend a lot of time on yachts too?
We don't talk about Geis.
Well, we don't talk about Kemp either.
Kemp, significantly better person than Geis.
Fair point.
Okay?
Fair point.
You can't even find Geis's name at LSU anymore.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
Fair.
Predator. And I don't mean like the big ones that Brody killed when he landed
Or
out
like
of
this
fell out of a parachute.
Isn't there like a superhero predator?
Shane, is there? That's your wheelhouse.
The Predator's been in comic books. If you're referencing that,
That is what I'm referencing.
Shane
it's
is
the same. It's the You guys are both referencing the same guy.
Is it Shane is a Rolodex? Hey, the
Oh,
guy
it's the same guy?
The guy that we're gonna talk
Geis.
to at 8:45.
Geis?
He's a snack cake dude too.
Hey, have you been paying attention to storylines this week, DB?
I'm trying not to.
So I'm not even talking about NFL. I'm just talking about entirely.
Yeah,
Think
well,
you
I
have a
told
pretty good
you.
basis.
So there's been the big three. It's Rayola, LaFraud James, and or LeBron James, and what was the other one? Hey Shane, can you let
Our next guest in?
the guy that's built like a stop sign in?
As long as he doesn't make me do push-ups, I'll do it.
Shane, I still think Man, I don't know. I've looked at that thing in slow-mo, man. I think I want to give it to me.
Hey, so because of storylines, I just picked a couple of storylines out there. Normally on Fridays, we do trivia with DB, which, there was so much going on. I'm like, do we do it? Do we not? And I'm like, maybe we won't actually participate in the game, but maybe we see how much DB's been paying attention to this
I
week.
don't.
So maybe it's just a question, these 3 questions for you. As you just knock over your camera,
I tell you what,
karate kick it off the table.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick that up right now because here's the thing.
Are you Tristan Alvano or are you Damon Benning?
No, if I was Tristan Alvano, I would have made it. Here's the thing, though. People unscrew and screw that thing in all the time, and it's like, hey.
Mike Sautter.
Yeah, the dude's shirt is tripping me out. Is that a tablecloth? Did you make a tablecloth a shirt?
Hey, don't get him started. He just kicked it down.
No, be careful. Don't get Sautter gassed up. He said he's going to shut the show down.
Hey,
you're a snack cake guy, right? Like Little Debbie? Yeah.
It's sideways, Shane, on our stream.
So of the 3, before we get you on, honey buns, Pop-Tarts, or zebra cakes? Strawberry Pop-Tart. Hey. What are you doing, Shane? Why are you
He's holding it on Sautter?
What a weirdo.
All right, so DB, here's your first question. We're going to see. I'm going to start easy, and then we're going to get a little bit harder here.
All right, let's go.
So KD made the headlines this week.
Mike, can you fix that camera, please?
When the Nets traded him to the Suns.
Thank you.
What team drafted KD?
Oklahoma City Thunder.
That is incorrect.
Oh, the Seattle Supersonics.
That is correct. They are the same franchise.
Thank you.
But
way to get me on a technicality.
You're welcome. I will never let you pass unless you get it there.
You're a different kind of DB.
Hey, last night, Patrick Mahomes won his 2nd MVP award, making him the 10th player to ever win the award twice.
Mm-hmm.
Only one won 2 MVPs. One quarterback won 2 MVPs in less time at the start of their career. Who was
it? Tom Brady. Incorrect.
Incorrect.
All right, give it to me.
Is it Kurt Warner, Joe Montana, or Brett Favre?
Oh, people had an affinity for that guy. I'll go with Brett Favre.
It is Kurt Warner.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
And you know what he said last night when he took the podium? 2-time MVP. And he goes, I was fortunate. I was blessed enough to win 2 of these. And I should have known.
I'm tying it into storylines.
I listened verbatim to what he said, and I still missed the question because I was like,
the answer
he
choices.
has the exact same haircut as his wife.
Hey, and here's my final question today for you.
Yes.
So when Garrett McGuire made reference
wrong with that.
to the 2009 Big 12 championship game yesterday, who kicked the game-winning field goal in that game for Texas?
It was not Dicker, the kicker.
It was not Dicker, the kicker.
He would have graduated. By the way, do you know that the guy that put the 1 second back on the clock is a regular attendee of Creighton games?
No way.
Oh, yeah. I saw him a couple Saturdays ago.
There was 1 second left in that game.
Stop.
Watch it back, DB. Watch the film.
The BCS. That's why they made that call. It would have been.
Dang right they did.
He was a brother, right? Because he had another brother that kicked, I think.
Was he a brother?
No, not like me, brother.
No, I know not you, brother. I meant like, did he have a brother?
I think he did.
Let's see.
Didn't he? Maybe he did. Maybe I'm thinking of all the Lashers that were at Oklahoma. RD and Tim and all those guys.
I don't know about his person.
I don't know who was the kicker.
The answer choices are Justin Tucker, Hunter Lawrence, or Ryan Bailey.
It was Hunter Lawrence.
That is correct. Yeah. Nice work.
Sounds like a kicker.
Not Justin Tucker though. He doesn't.
Well,
sound
that
like
was.
a kicker.
Well, I knew it wasn't JT. I mean, because that guy's on his way to Lincoln, according to you.
He is. The next
you
one.
Dropped Justin Tucker on Tristan Alvano. No pressure.
3 times.
Hey, that thing is a little stripped. I don't think you're going to get it to hold.
Hey, as Mike Sautter finagles with the camera.
And this is his wheelhouse, too. He's like an equipment camera junkie.
We'll talk to him next about high school sports because this isn't going well right now. Stick with us.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Coffee and Radio. This segment with Mike Sautter is presented by Awaken. Rogers. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning. If you can't figure out why I look the way that I do on camera, I don't give a what. That's where the establishment should do what's asked, and I'm not conforming. So
You're hilarious. You've gone every direction.
I've talked about this, and it is what it is. And when you don't hold up your end of the deal, that's what you get. Anyway,
screen.
How long have I talked about this though? Well, he's always the guy that gets on and doesn't have his audio turned down. Oh, my audio is fine. Your audio is not fine, Mike Sautter. Your audio is turned up. Turn it up. Look, he thinks he is so
Turn
funny.
it up some.
Look, he's like, how does this look? Mike, I don't give two cares about that camera. right? I've been talking about the setting up and tearing down.
Looks
of this
good, Mike.
place,
Looks
and
good.
you know what was told to me? Well, hey, you just got to come early and kind of some
Hey,
of that.
Sasha's hooking us up.
Some of that's to be
She
expected.
got some new equipment. We're good.
It's not to be expected if the equipment is broke. Okay, so
If it
let's
ain't
start
broke,
there.
don't fix it.
Now I got to cut you. Right now, Honey Buns is getting smoked. Pop-Tarts is starting to run away with this thing, and we already have over 400 votes. Mike Sautter, Honey Buns, Pop-Tarts, or Zebra Cakes? You said Pop-Tarts, strawberry.
Strawberry Pop-Tarts with the frosting, the white
You're
frosting with the sprinkles.
You do have the palate, full disclosure, of a child.
Oh, yeah.
So do I.
Actually, not so much.
Really? You don't think so?
So
last night I had mac and cheese for the third straight day.
So my man over here,
I can't hear
Mike Sautter, will he will attempt to cook something. Chicken Parmesan, let's say. He will take the sauce out of the jar. He'll take an already breaded chicken patty. He'll put a piece of cheese
That's
on
not
there.
true. I do it myself.
And tell me, look what I did.
Panko
I'm over-
crumbs. I know how to do that myself. Panko, I make it myself.
Mike, just cut it out.
Not the chicken, obviously. But
you don't butcher your own chicken?
No.
I did figure out the difference between hens and chickens and why chicken prices aren't.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Exorbitant as high as eggs are.
What? Okay.
And apparently swine flu is it's a hoax. I just love listening to reading these Twitter threads. Like people have all these conspiracy theories. By the way, this camera sucks. Did you fix it?
I tried to.
I want to knock it off the table.
I already did it once.
It's the best I can do right now.
So you know how
with
just
what I
some
got.
things irritate me? It's weird. Like I'll put up with a lot, but you know the things that really irritate me are things that have been addressed repeatedly and nobody does anything, and then when it like actually happens, like I have zero. You're like, oh, switch cameras. No, how about not? Oh, I won't be on camera. Anyway. Dude, it's just
you get it out. You
dude,
good?
it's
like reconciliation.
I'm just telling you, man. It is totally who I am. It is totally who I am. You got to take it all. The good with the bad. The good with the bad.
It's all good things.
Michael Jerome.
Yeah.
Welcome. We talked to
JJ Zumbrennen.
Yeah, JJ Zumbrennen. He said it like he was like foreign espionage. JJ Zumbrennen.
He's like, I've been listening.
Covered that dude in high school.
So you know what's funny? Was that you or was it Jacob that said he could coach at Elkhorn South as long as he wants to?
I said that. Yeah, for sure.
Was that in passing?
No, I don't
Because
know.
we weren't on air.
Yeah,
we were just talking about him one day.
He could. Like he loves the place. It's like he went to school there. I just don't see him ever leaving there on his own accord, right?
I didn't realize that all 5 of those guys were
Yeah.
seniors. So he's gonna have to reload.
Right. Be all right.
But they should be okay.
He's fine.
God, they play hard. How about their 6 losses?
Yeah.
I think they're West Side, Gretna, Bellevue West, Millard North, Creighton Prep, and one more good one. Oh, Lincoln South or Lincoln East and Lincoln Southwest. That's right. And that was back when Lincoln Southwest, that was in the opener when Lincoln Southwest was fully loaded.
They
Millard North, West Side, Lincoln East, Bellevue West, Gretna, Lincoln Southwest. Those are good losses.
That's why their PowerPoints are so high, probably.
Yeah, they're going to be a problem in districts because they'll be
They'll be a
misseeded.
2 or something. Oof.
They'll be They will be a high seed.
After that game last week was Thursday, Friday night, whatever, against West Side. I actually sent a text to Coach Simons and said, "Man, Elkhorn South is going to be a really tough 2 seed."
Do you know what? I was just happy that it wasn't at Elkhorn South. I have never seen. This is boys and girls, so whether it's Millard North or West Side, I've never seen a smooth, easygoing, good game in that gym. It's always some sort of grudger, doesn't go the way you think it's gonna go. I just never seen an aesthetically pleasing game in that gym.
If they get like full throat student section too, it can get real loud.
Hey, listen, how nasty was that environment Thursday?
It was tough.
Or Friday.
Friday, yeah, last week.
Couple of technicals. By the way, and I felt bad for
got booted.
So can be like that.
I'm just saying.
He can be like, I've known him for our kids have played against each other forever. That was not a foul on Evan though, and that was not a foul. So And the game was officiated crazy. A couple of technicals. Hornbacher grabbed Caleb. It was great. And the funny thing about Hornbacher grabbing Caleb is the respective moms played soccer together, lighting up on the kids. She was the goalie at Nebraska before Karina LeBlanc came, and she was a great athlete. We used to call her Zap from American Gladiators.
Oof.
Oh yeah,
I love that show.
There's a reason why
I wanted a
Hornbacher
perm
plays so
like
hard.
that one, the one big dude who had the dark hair, like the perm mullet back then. I was like, I wish.
That wasn't Nitro, right? That was the guy that looked like Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about
How
that.
early, how early
Steiner
did the
brothers
perm go
hair.
away for you?
Well, the
Like-
perm
like
is
if you-
back.
like when? No, I'm talking about for
Oh,
like Mike.
pretty
Like how
like
early did
20
this all start going away?
Show him
4
that
or
picture you
5.
showed me like a year ago when you had hair.
24 or 5.
It wasn't that long ago.
When I my hair, I started.
See, he's doing that to me on purpose.
started
Yeah,
shaving my
yeah.
hair. I started shaving my head in about 6 years ago.
Are you ready for your broadcast tonight?
Yeah, I'm fully prepared.
Are you
think.
calling
I have
games this
shot
weekend?
sheets and everything? I'm gonna punch you in the face.
He's so mean.
Look, see Bishop Walsh, Crane
Hey!
Prep, shot sheets.
I like
all
that.
of Yeah,
You're gonna be able to
That's
keep.
what I did.
You can keep running stats.
I'm
Don't
gonna
you have?
try.
Do you have a
It's hard.
stat monitor?
No,
Well, where's Jacob Padilla? He's the man.
he will be there on Saturday.
Did you build in that within your
I built
own
that.
program, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you? Is it an Excel sheet?
Uh-huh.
Like, did you put the math in it too, so you can
No.
automatically add up things?
No.
Okay.
Don't you need? What do you call those? Like, isn't that some sort of logarithm or something? Where the Excel
No.
does the
Yeah.
Formula.
It's you type in a certain
There's
formula,
formulas.
and then
Yeah.
all you have to do is like
Sum equals
like you hit plus, and then it just adds it.
that sounds like a question for Jamie.
actual equals sum parentheses A3.
I know there's something.
colon A4 parentheses will give you the total of the two. There's a lot more to it than
So do I need to ask you about? Totally on me. Which matchups are you looking forward to?
Mhm.
This weekend.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be Westside Bryan.
Yeah, Millard North Gretna tonight is
Yeah, it's
the
gonna
one.
be
That's the best game tonight for me.
first one to 47 wins.
Yeah, it's going to be a grinder. I will say that.
Right?
Derek Rollins, Jeff Roselle, how do they defend? Can Millard North play at the pace they want?
Got to take good care of the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to do that, I think. Like you said, Ty Smolinski said a couple weeks ago, his physicality is something.
I would imagine he guards Mosser.
I
He
would
could
think
make things
so.
miserable for Neil.
Yeah, take him out.
Well, I don't know if he can that because Neil
Neil's-
always has the ability to go get fouled.
And he's also cooking right now.
Yeah.
a little bit, too.
Yeah.
So, like he really is. And Eli, like who I'm sure Pecorsi will guard him. That's one that's pretty interesting. That tonight that's my game of the week is that one.
Yeah.
If I had to just pick them. And then I like the Westside Bryan matchup. It's very interesting. Can Amari just like put the team on his back because he probably is going to have to? Can Westside defend and find a way to put the ball in the basket at a consistent rate?
Here's the
because they
thing.
didn't on Tuesday. Now
people say that about them, and they do go through shooting woes. They take too many difficult shots.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody. They take way too many contested shots. Share the ball better.
guys, Lincoln East is good.
No, I know. Hey, Carter
Like,
Mick, as I was telling my man Drew down about.
Templemeyer.
I told him
like-
he may be my favorite non-Benning that resides in Lincoln. Is
They're
Carter,
really
Carter
You love
Mick.
your baseball players.
Dude, he's just, and he's good natured. Like they try to harass him and they clutch and touch and grab, and he doesn't say anything. And that was the second game in a row where I saw guys get defended really, really hard and not bat an eye. Alec Noonan and the night before was unbelievably competitive because nothing came easy.
Right. East. I would love to see.
They're good.
I would love to see Lincoln East and Gretna play because I think it'd be literally like first 1 to 50 wins, 52 to 49. Or
East is more capable offensively,
Yes.
in my opinion.
I agree, but I'm just saying defensively, they're just so sound. I
Yeah.
think.
And
tough kids. The matchups kind of fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was I was really impressed with Lincoln.
Gretna probably has
Easton.
more options. Wilcoxon can get
Mhm.
going. Pokorski can get going. Rossell can get going. I like not Alec, but Alec. Yeah, I like
Alex
Wilkins.
Wilkins. Yeah, Alec Wilkins.
So they probably have more options, but I think
Right.
East shoots it better.
Here, hold the thoughts, rest of the thoughts for morning dump as we wrap this thing up.
Yep,
We want
if
to take
you-
you a moment to tell you about Dingman's.
Yeah, I will do that, Andrew, since you're so dead set on it, man. Had my experience yesterday. You need to follow suit. If anything is wrong with your vehicle, hopefully you won't end up needing 2 new tires like I do. I will see them. Two. I'll get into that story later on, man. Oil change was free. That was great.
Yeah,
Customer service
no.
was great. My man walked out. He said, "You want the bad news first or the good news?" Darcy was in there. I said, "Give me the bad news. Hopefully she can make it okay." Nah, your boy's coming out of pocket quite a bit of chunk change because he's got an all-wheel drive vehicle. My feelings are hurt, but Dingman's will take care of you. Great location. They've got 4 of them. Make sure you hit the one on 120th and Maple. Fantastic customer service. It's Dingman's.
We'll see you next week.